It was 1941. Experiments in a University of California laboratory, conducted by Dr. Glenn Seaborg, Arthur Wall, Dr. Edwin McMillan, and Dr. Emilio Segre, resulted in the discovery of a new element with important implications for the conduct of World War II, then raging in Europe. On December 2nd, 1942, the Italian refugee scientist Dr. Enrico Fermi, working in cramped quarters under the University of Chicago Stadium, demonstrated how the new element could be produced in usable quantities. The Manhattan Engineer District was created by the Army Corps of Engineers, and among other events, the nation was searched for a site to build a secret project, which, it was hoped, would bring the war to an end. There were also great implications for a better peacetime life for all men. All that was required, and more, was found in the southeastern Washington desert, stretching sun-bleached, withered, dry, and practically unpopulated as far as the eye could see, bounded on one side for miles by the required abundance of cool water from the Columbia River, and with the necessary virtually unlimited supply of electrical power. The little village of Hanford was purchased intact to be the construction camp because of its proximity to the site chosen for the project, a project that only a small number of men knew anything about and were not at all certain would succeed. It was a gamble considered well worth taking. Trailers moved into Hanford camp by the thousand, and tar paper barracks sprang up overnight to house the thousands of construction workers recruited from all over the nation. Nearby, in the bright desert sunshine, the somber shape of the mammoth-sized secret plant began to mushroom up and out. Hanford Camp grew from a population of 400 to a metropolis of trailers and tar paper barracks accommodating 51,000 for 2 years of glory as the fourth largest city in the state of Washington, and then was abandoned. Although nothing like it had ever been constructed before, in less than 2 years, by late 1944, the mammoth plant was ready for operation. During the construction period, other changes had been taking place. The government-owned town of Richland had expanded into a bustling community of more permanent-type housing for the people now operating the Hanford plant. Trucks by the hundred shuttled back and forth over miles of broad new highways leading to Hanford. Long trains snaked across the desert on mile after mile of newly laid track, bringing a tremendous variety of materials streaming into Hanford. Every kind of conveyance arrived full and left empty. All coming in, nothing going out. But something was going out. What had been built by the DuPont Company for the Manhattan Engineer District were 3 Fermi-type nuclear reactors, scaled up from the one Dr. Fermi had built under the University of Chicago Stadium for the production of plutonium. Also constructed were 3 chemical plants for the separation of the pure metal, scaled up to a process 1 billion times more than the microscopic bit of plutonium the University of California scientists had made experimentally with a cyclotron. It would be the most remarkable scale-up in history if it worked. And it did work. Hardly an engineering change was required, despite the strange construction needed for the devices to make the new element. Ancient alchemists had tried to change base metals into gold by transmutation. Now, man was using the process to change plentiful uranium-238 into plutonium, a metal far more precious than gold. Plutonium exists so sparsely in nature that one 4-pound button probably represents more than all the scattered atoms in the Earth.
Okay, turn on
150 on B5.
150 on B5.
B5 stored on 751 days.
Sealed in airtight cans, it is stored in a vault. One pound of plutonium has the potential energy of nearly 3 million pounds of coal, or 5,000 barrels of oil. Plutonium is fissionable, as is uranium-235, which exists in relatively small quantities, and was being separated from uranium ore in another secret project at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The United States had taken two possible routes to nuclear weapons: fissionable uranium from Oak Ridge and plutonium from Hanford, and both had worked. Our nation possessed the ingredients for the most powerful weapons ever conceived, and the secret was out. After the war, when the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission was created by an act of Congress, the Richland headquarters for the Hanford Works became part of the AEC. The AEC was created to develop peacetime uses of atomic energy, as well as military, and numerous peacetime efforts were started. But Hanford's national defense mission did not diminish. The first 3 reactors were refurbished and improved. Meanwhile, the DuPont Company had withdrawn as prime contractor and was succeeded by the General Electric Company. As Cold War tensions increased and more weapons were developed for the nuclear arsenal, the government investment at Hanford rose to more than $1 billion. With the addition of 5 new reactors and improved chemical separation plants, 3 times longer than a football field. Hanford reactors used machined aluminum-clad cylindrical uranium fuel elements, 8 inches long, weighing 8 pounds. Uranium contains less than 1% of fissionable uranium, the neutron-emitting isotope, uranium-235. The remainder is uranium-238, which is transmuted to plutonium when it captures an extra neutron. Fuel elements are delivered to the 5-story high reactors, where workers are protected by thick concrete walls and safe work procedures. The reactor is charged by feeding fuel elements into tubes honeycombing the reactor. The tubes extend through the concrete shielding and through the inner graphite block, used as a moderator to slow neutrons and make capture easier. Atomic fission is a silent, smokeless, energy-producing process. The tremendous heat energy generated in the reactors is carried off by large volumes of coolant water circulated through the reactors. Each reactor has a water purification facility adequate to serve a city of 250,000 population. as new fuel elements are fed into the front face of the reactor. From the rear face, highly radioactive spent elements, now containing the precious plutonium, are ejected behind thick shielding into deep water pools, where they remain until much of the intense radioactivity decays. Still highly radioactive, the fuel elements are transported from the pool to a chemical separations plant. Within long canyons, equipment is under concrete floors 5 feet thick. The operator of the huge crane works in a cab suspended behind a concrete parapet, viewing his work through a periscope. Changes and repairs to equipment are made with tools suspended from the crane. In processing vessels under the concrete floor, aluminum cladding is removed and the fuel is changed into 3 liquid solutions of plutonium, unused uranium, and the waste radioactive fission byproducts. Wastes are piped away for processing and storage. Uranium and plutonium are converted to solids. Uranium is reprocessed for further use. In more than 120 reactor operating years, there have been no major injuries, a safety record that compares to the safest of non-nuclear industry. In 1959, construction was started on a dual-purpose reactor to make plutonium for defense and steam for the generation of electricity.
0467.
To cover the removal of that.
We had an RM in here.
222, please.
I am down to 2 men now, and 2 tubes at a time will be a
Okay,
plan.
good enough. Stand by for a few minutes.
With the reactor building completed in 1963, the late President John F. Kennedy arrived at Hanford to break ground for the construction of the power plant.
And I think it's very appropriate that we come here, where so much has been done to build the military strength of the United States, and to find a chance to strike a blow for peace, and to find a chance to strike a blow for a better life for our fellow citizens. This is a great national asset here. I can assure you it will be maintained. And from the work we begin today, I hope the light will spread out, not merely to those who are served by electricity, but to all the world to realize that here in the United States, we're moving ahead and providing security for our people, and also a hope for a better life in this most beautiful country of ours. Thank you.
The power plant was financed by the Washington Public Power Supply System, a group of public utility districts. And by late 1966, was supplying electricity to the Bonneville Power Administration for homes and industries, from steam originating in the Hanford dual-purpose N reactor facility. There is another side of the Hanford Atomic Project, research and development. From the beginning of the Hanford Project, studies were conducted continuously to assure that the environment would not be affected adversely. The air, ground, and water in and around the project are checked and tested regularly. Examination of fish and other aquatic organisms can tell scientists much about levels of radioactivity in water. Scientists collect birds and animals which live on the Hanford Reservation to study how their lives are affected by living in the environment of an atomic facility. Plants are used to study the ways in which radioactivity might be taken up through the roots from the soil. Certain kinds of animals are bred and raised for Hanford study programs.
The effects of radioactivity can best be studied in animals that approximate the size of man. Here at Hanford, we have developed a miniature swine that has body weight, bone structure, gastrointestinal tract, and skin surfaces somewhat similar to that of man. So it makes a much easier realm of extrapolation from the information we get in swine to that might apply to man.
Hanford has become an important center for biological research. Many criteria used for established limits of exposure to different kinds of radiation were developed from Hanford studies. Weather forecasting operations were conducted in order to govern the release of radioactive gases. From this, the atmospheric physics section branched out to studies for the Air Force of burned out rocket fuels in the atmosphere. Studies are made of changes in uranium fuel elements caused by heat and irradiation for the development of more efficient peacetime power reactor fuels. The enlarged pictures are made into mosaics, which have been shown around the world. The heat from radioactive decay of a few pounds of plutonium-238 converted directly to electrical energy will run equipment in a space satellite for many years. And of course, increasing use of plutonium will conserve the limited supply of fissionable uranium. Scientists, protected by thick leaded glass windows, use remote control devices to study radioactive materials. A giant impact forge capable of exerting a pressure of 400,000 pounds a square inch can compact pieces of plutonium to great density for use in new types of fuel elements and combine incompatible metals and other materials more economically than by any other method. One of the most important laboratory projects has resulted in the plutonium recycle test reactor for testing fuel elements in which plutonium substitutes for fissionable uranium. Powdered uranium and plutonium are compacted in the fuel elements by ultra-high frequency sound waves. Scientists of Pacific Northwest Laboratory, cooperating with other AEC laboratories and private industry, are experimenting to develop plutonium fast breeder reactors, the power reactors of the future. Dr. Seaborg, chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, said,
"The discovery of plutonium gave man access to truly plentiful sources of nuclear energy, which he can produce himself. One method of production is by means of breeder reactors, such as you see here. Reactors like this in operation at the AEC testing station in Idaho. This kind of reactor is called a breeder because it produces more nuclear fuel than it uses as it is producing electrical power. Now, in years to come, larger and more complex breeder reactors will be placed in the hands of future generations in almost unlimited numbers to produce a very large source of electrical power, far surpassing any other source of electrical power that is available to us."
The Atomic Energy Commission provides the means to develop these new sources of energy for the nation. The manager of the Richland AEC office, Donald G. Williams, tells of the important role his staff has in this program.
The Atomic Energy Commission Richland Operations Office, with about 325 employees, is responsible for administration of contracts to assure that the Commission's goals for the billion-dollar Hanford plant and the 8,000 contractor employees are met. In January 1964, the President announced that production of fissionable uranium would be reduced by 25%, and that 4 plutonium production reactors would be shut down, 3 of them at Hanford. The Atomic Energy Commission felt a unique responsibility to the Richland area, since there was no large metropolitan development nor diversified industry to provide opportunity for residents who could lose jobs at Hanford. The Atomic Energy Commission began a program called Segmentation and Diversification to produce new jobs in the Richland area. An Office of Economic Impact and Conversion was set up in AEC headquarters in Washington, D.C., and an Office of Contractor Replacement was opened in Richland. The Tri-City Nuclear Industrial Council, which had formed in the community late in 1962 to help stimulate industry, joined with the federal government and industry to create a 3-way partnership which has proven very effective. The General Electric Company elected to terminate its Hanford Prime contract to accelerate the program. And in less than 2 years from the start of the segmentation and diversification program, 7 new contractors were operating at Hanford and organizing new business ventures for private commercial work in the Richland area. To stimulate the area's economy, offset the plutonium production cutback, and bring new firms into the atomic energy industry. Some of the nation's largest industrial firms are involved. ISOChem Incorporated is planning an $8 million facility to recover useful radioactive materials from stored Hanford wastes for sale to industry. International Telephone and Telegraph Corporation has formed a subsidiary, Federal Support Services, for work at Hanford, and through another subsidiary, Federal Electric Corporation, has announced plans for a $2 million electronics assembly plant. Jointly owned Douglas United Nuclear Incorporated is planning a plutonium fuels manufacturing facility. Independently, Douglas Aircraft Company began construction of a laboratory for applications of nuclear power in space, and United Nuclear began plans for a zirconium tube factory. Total diversification resulting from this contract amounts to more than $7 million. Battelle Memorial Institute has begun private contract research and has started building a $20 million laboratory for private contract work. Computer Sciences Corporation not only is processing Hanford data, but also data from private industry which flows in and out of the computer center on telephone lines. New equipment is leased and installed next to the government-owned computers. U.S. Testing Company is processing all radiation film badges for Hanford and is branching out with testing services for private industry, investing almost $500,000 in its Richland operation. Hanford Occupational Health Foundation is providing health care for Hanford workers, and Vitro Engineering Company and J.A. Jones Construction Company are continuing at Hanford under contracts signed earlier. When the companies use government facilities for their private work, they pay the full use cost back to the government. New facilities planned by our contractors will cost an estimated $38 million of private funds and provide more than 1,800 new jobs. The response of industry to AEC's segmentation and diversification program has been even greater than was expected.
There were many reasons for the response of industry. The large staff of Hanford-trained expert scientists and technicians was a most valuable asset. The waterways linking the desert with the growing Pacific Northwest market and foreign ports were an incentive to industry. An opportunity to work for advanced degrees is offered through a graduate school in Richland. Students do their research at Hanford facilities. thousands of visitors are attracted to the Hanford Science Center in the Richland Administration Building. And living is pleasant in an area of good weather, clear air, clean water, and miles of land for community growth with expanding facilities and services influenced largely by Hanford. Worthy of mention, too, is the unequaled opportunity for outdoor recreational activities. But most important was the AEC's concern for Richland and the cooperative effort of federal government, Tri-City community, and industry to meet the challenge presented by a production cutback with a bold program which could provide a pattern useful for other locations experiencing cutbacks in operations. The miracles of the past and the miracle of the present point the way to as yet undreamed of future miracles in the desert.